What's kicking, McChickens? Today, in our compositional video, we are going to be learning about form. So, what is form? Form in music is how your song is organized. And you've probably heard this in just some of your favorite songs. So, for instance, and I'm going to actually see if this whiteboard works real quick. When you hear a song on the radio, you're probably already familiar with some concepts of form. So you hear a song come on and it starts out and it has an intro. Cool. Listen. You hear the intro, and then they go into this thing called a verse. And then that verse has a chorus that comes after it. And they do an altered version. This ring light's like kind of getting in the way of this. Spooky. There you go. Light might not be as good. Anyway, intro, verse, chorus, and then you have another verse, and then you have another chorus, and then sometimes you have this thing called a bridge, right? And then maybe you'll have another verse, and you'll have another chorus. And you'll have an outro. Cool. So that's a very basic version of form. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take that story that you wrote in the last video for your song, and we're going to break those up into pieces to create the form of your song. So let's go over like some types of form. So I created a sheet that's called music forms. It's a non-exhaustive list because there's so many different ways to do this that go over forms. So we're going to skip over this part right now. Let's start with these things called binary and ternary forms, right? Which is pretty much just like you have an A and a B. You have one section of the song and you have a section of the song that's different than that first section. So binary is just you do an A and then you do a B. Done. You could have rounded binary as you have an A, a B, and then you have this thing which is a variation of the first part of the song, right? This A with this little apostrophe mark. So now we go up here. Well, what is that apostrophe mark? You'll see that a lot in form. That's called a prime mark. And a prime mark is pretty much just saying, hey, this section of the song is the same as a previous section of the song. We're just going to modify it a little bit. Like it's not as different as B, but it's different than A. So you can have A, B, then A prime. You can even have double primes, right? So where A is altered again, but it's not the same as A prime or the first version of A. So I just want to define that real quick. You can also have these things called through composed forms. So if you're a prog musician, like maybe you've heard of progressive rock or progressive metal, they tend to use some elements of through composed. So they might not repeat anything in the song. It's just all the way through. You may have sections where they do like a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus, and then they like do a bridge and then something completely different than the verse, a chorus, and the bridge, and something different than the verse, a chorus, a bridge, etc., etc. Like Coheed and Cambria does this a lot, where they, in their early albums, where they start with like kind of a standard song form and then just completely go off. If you've heard of things of like a minuet or a sonata or a canon or a fugue, right? You've probably heard these terms before. So like if you heard of the song Row, Row, Row Your Boat when you were in elementary school and everybody's singing it at like different parts, that's a type of canon called a round. It's like a simple canon, but that's a form. Toccata and fugue in D minor, that dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. Can't sing that low. But fugue is a type of form. Yeah, I won't get into all this, but I did include this in the class notes folder. So if you haven't, link is always in the description, but you can read through this and think about the different types of form there are. Cool. So let's go to our story, right? So in the first part, in this inspiration, we wrote this story synopsis, some characters, some environments, some major events, and let's actually break this apart some. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. So again, for yours, it's inspiration in your song. I'm working on the example inspiration example of your song. Just follow along. I'm going to go over to example your song. I'm just going to paste this somewhere random so I can have it in the same screen. But we have in our story synopsis, a party with a mercenary soldier and runaway princess rally against the martial kingdom controlled by ruthless vizier sweeping the continent, right? And this is going to be a battle theme song. So maybe in the first part of the song, I want to like introduce the soldier and the priestess. Cool. And they're like, it was just like, hey, here are these characters. They're in a party prepping to go to fight. And you can hear like in the distance in this next section, the presence of the martial kingdom. I don't know. And I'm going to call these guys the party. Like our hero parties, our heroes are mentally preparing. I don't know how to spell preparing this. Preparing? Who cares? I care. That sounds right. Preparing to go to fight. They are nervous. However, they remember the reason they are fighting, and that is to restore balance to the continent and save oodles of people, right? Heroes approach the battlefield. And clash swords, and bows, horses, and all that funky junk. Things are getting dangerous. Our heroes seem to be winning, but then chaos ensues as the vizier pulls out a hidden strategy. Our heroes are on the brink of losing, but I don't know. Find a second wind and seem to cinch or victory ... for now, and then it repeats. Right, so this doesn't have to be like the most detailed thing. You can make it more detailed. I'm just trying to like get in a sense of the different feelings that we're going through. So like, let's actually see this in action. So what you can do is if you go online, let's just go to the Google machine, right? And let's do a despair. So this is one of the things that I did, a despair-filled farewell, bow with the Colossus, and type in sheet music. Now, you don't need to know sheet music yet, but we're going to do some like very baseline reading of sheet music. So let's click on this one, advanced mode, and let's just zoom out real quick. And so I'm sharing this sheet music of a despair-filled farewell. And again, if you can find sheet music of yours, please do. And if we look at this without even having to know what we're looking at, we can see, like visually, really how different some of these sections of the song are. And they're probably going to sound different from one another. So we can see, like, in these first couple of bars, like, these look very similar compared to the ones down here, right? This all kind of looks like it belongs together. Until maybe you get to this section, right, where you see these little notes are different, and all right, and then you get like all the way down here and it's totally different, and then you get to here and it's totally different. So you can start saying like, oh, like this is probably telling a part of the story, and this is telling another part of the story. Then we get to here and it changes to a different part of the story. Then we get to here and it changes to a different part of the story, so on and so forth, all the way down, right? So this is kind of what we're doing, and let's actually see this in action. So if I play this intro, Cool. So that's what this sounded like. Pretty cool. But let's like go down here to where this section sounds totally different than up here. Whoa, that's crazy, right? We can already see like the different forms in our song sound differently. So let's go down here to where it's like really different. Whoa. All right. And even here, I'll do one more. Right? Like that's form. That's form and work. You can see very distinct parts. It's like chapters of a book. And you can actually see that in the sheet music. So let's go back and fill this in. So I have like some distinct chapters here. I have like this introduction, and I'll call this A. And well, before we go into that, like let's actually do this whole A-B thing that we learned in that sheet music, right? If we go back to how songs are written, we have an intro, and maybe I won't give this A yet, but maybe I'll make verse A, and then I'll make chorus B, and then this next verse A, but hell, we'll make it A prime, because it's like kind of the same as this verse, but like maybe it's a little bit different, like maybe there's some extra drums in there, and then the chorus, right? B prime. You got B prime. And we have this bridge, which is C. Totally different than A and B. And then this next verse, we can make it the same as A or A prime, but let's change it up. Let's make it A double prime. And this chorus, well, maybe I don't want to do to it anything different than I did when I amped up the chorus the first time. So we'll just keep that B prime, and then we have our outro. So intro, A, B, A prime, B prime, C, A double prime, B prime, outro. You can do whatever you want. Right? So now we're going to do this with our song. So in mine, I kind of wrote this stuff out. And so I have, I introduced the soldier and the priestess. They're in a party prepping to go to fight. So this is like A. And then I hear the distant presence of this martial kingdom. I'll make that B. And our heroes are mentally preparing to go to fight. They are nervous. Well, this is kind of talking about this here. Like we're talking about the soldier and the priestess. So this is A, but I'll make this a little bit different. That's gonna be A prime. But they remember the reason they are fighting, and that is to restore balance and to save the continent and save oodles of people. That's also very similar to this. Maybe this is like A double prime, or maybe this gets put together. Like maybe I condense this into one. This doesn't have to be set in stone. And honestly, the one I'm about to upload is going to be different than what I type here. But you can flex with this, right? And then our heroes approach the battlefield. Well, I actually want this to like really be focused on like the heroes and the vizier coming together. So it's like a little bit of A, maybe a little bit of B. So I could call it that. But I'm just going to call it C. This is like a different section. But I'll put this like A and B together because I want to combine these elements. And then there's this clash, so maybe we're just going to amp C up even more, make that C prime, and then our heroes seem to be winning, so I'll make this A triple prime, but then we have the vizier come. So this is like D. And then our heroes are on the brink of losing, so this is like maybe a less intense version, so we'll just make this A quadruple prime, but they find a second wind. I'll probably just condense these into one. And they seem to be clinching victory. So this is kind of like maybe when they get to the battlefield. So the C, right? It's like valor coming on, and then D, like this we'll call this a transition. Maybe it's too short to assign its own thing. Play it by ear. It doesn't have to be set in stone. But now you can see like, oh, when I write this song, I want this section to be different from this section, and this section to kind of remind me of this section, and like you can kind of start seeing how these all come together. Oh, I already have a C prime, so I'm gonna make the C double prime. Easy. So now what I like to do is go through, and this is more so when we get to the producing stage. I like to go through and think about like the intensity and the feeling that I'm trying to go after with this. So let's start with feeling. So with feeling, it's like, what am I trying to get the viewers or the listeners to feel when they hear the song? Very much when I flip back over to the inspiration tab, right? I'm like, oh, in Fight for Freedom, I hear these clear motifs. I hear these feelings of desperation and hope. In Revived Power, it feels bombastic, it feels loud, it feels powerful, similar to each of these sections. So I introduce the soldier and the priestess. They're prepping to go out to fight. So like maybe like you know, I just introduce motifs of my characters. It could be relatively calm because they're not fighting yet. And the distance, presence of the martial kingdom. You know, I feel when I think about this, maybe I hear like marching, solemn feelings because you know war's going on in the background, but you're not quite there yet. But you feel like this like marching of military, whatever. Heroes are preparing to go fight. They're nervous, so like pre-war anxiety. Maybe this is like a quiet section, right? Like the calm before the storm. And then here, they remember why they're fighting, so valor, and I want to feel bravery, and maybe even a sense of bravado and, you know, fanfare, right? And then they approach the battlefield. Honestly, these can probably go together, but like I want to get this feeling of like shit's about to go down. So what does that sound like? What does shit about to going down feel like? Like the heartbeats. I feel like deep breathing. It's like it's kind of anxiety driving, but more badass, you know. It's not like this helpless anxiety. It's just like, all right, we're about to do this. So like whatever, I'm gonna call it badass anxiety. I know what that means. And clash, so like war, fighting, explosion, because I'm sure things exploded, you know, in medieval times. There's magic, why not? They'll cast fireball. Our heroes seem to be winning, so hope. Victory is within grasp. And then everything is just ripped away. So now we go from hope to hopelessness. Anger. Well, I actually think anger fits really well with the second win. Like they're like, no way, Jose. Anger, we will not lose. And then real fanfare as they seem to clinch victory, and then kind of like this chaotic return to the beginning. Awesome. Cool. Sweet. Now let's think about like how intense these parts are, because, you know, when we think about eventually when we want to produce, general rule of thumb that I really like is I want to mix and produce the most intense, loudest, craziest parts first, because from then I can work my way down and not have to worry about like blowing out my speakers. And we'll get more into why that's important later on. But overall, you're gonna get a better sound if you're not trying to like constantly adjust your volume to make sure you're not distorting or clipping anything. So it's better to start loud and then mix quieter. And then if everything's too quiet after that, then you can boost everything. Versus like you start quiet and you're like, I want to make this louder, this louder, this louder, this crazier, and then everything's gotten out of control. So when I think of like intensity, what's going to be, I have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 sections. So we'll say like, well, obviously the clash is going to be the most intense. And like, what's the second most intense? Maybe they're like, they remember why they're there. And then Vizier pulls out a hidden strategy. You seem to clinch victory. Again, there's no signs, just like whatever comes to mind. You don't have to kill yourself over this. We're on 5, approaching the battlefield. Loss, winning. I counted this wrong. 1, 1, 2, 3. I'm missing something. 1, 2, 3. I forgot 7. I can't read. I can't count. Anyway, 9, 10, 11. Sweet. Now it's really cool that what I like to just do a really brief check for is I like to have juxtaposition, like a 1 and a 7 and a 5 to a 1 and a 2 to a 5. Like those differences in intensity make like some really cool juxtaposition. But then when I want some smooth transition, that works out too. It's like this 10 to 11, great. Because again, this is a game song, so we want to loop back around to the beginning because we don't know how long it's going to take our player to fight. So right when things like this here is our climax, this area here, and you can see it's just like strong and medium and weak and strong, and that's awesome. That's what I want in a climactic moment. But things are kind of a little more smoother at the beginning, the end. So I think this works really well. Awesome. So now what we can do is we're going to take all of these little numbers and all this description, and then we're going to just transpose it to these columns here, because then we're going to think about instruments, things that we're actually hearing. So I'll skip it. Well, I'll show you me actually doing this so you see it in action, and then we'll go from there. So this is instrumentation. This is like our form parts for form parts, FYI. Cool. So we have on caps lock A, B, A prime, A double prime. We're just going to call, well, I'll keep it standard for sake of reading ABC. C prime, A triple prime, D, A, Amazon Prime. Just kidding. You, Amazon, do not get free marketing through me, greedy bastards. Although I think I just kind of gave you free marketing. Oh well. Sugar honey iced tea. Happens. Po buddy's nerfect, as they say. Feel free to skip this part if you kind of get an idea of what I'm doing. But again, I just want to show it so that way you have it. Because I'm a generous guy. Okay. I'm doing this course for free. That makes me cool. Maybe. Or not. Y'all can tell me to just go fart off. I won't mind, because I can't hear you. Unless you leave it in the comments. Then that'd make me. I wouldn't. Because you know what? I like it. I'm a good egg. A great egg. Especially considering how expensive eggs are in the time of me making this video. We're going to tell our grandkids about the great egg inflation of 2025. And they'd be like, gee, Pop, I can't believe you did. Yeah, champ, me too. Anyway. Isn't that nice? Isn't that swell? Okay, cool. So, we're back. So I've just taken all this and I put it here. So now what I'm going to do is, again, this can change. You don't have to know this right out of the gate. I'm going to think about when I hear these sections in the song, what are the instruments that come to mind? I'm just going to mark them on this mix sheet. So, hey, I introduced the soldier and the priestess. They're in the party. They're ready to fight. So, and this is like kind of calm in their motif. So I like strings and violas, and maybe a cello. I don't really want too much brass. It might be a little heavy for the section. A flute and a clarinet could be cool. Percussion. Bells. I have this thing called taste on here, by the way. You can alter this if you want. That's like maybe like some wind chimes or whatever, like percussion to taste. And a harp would be nice. Cool. So yeah, you can add things on in here if you want. But so yeah, when I think about this, these are the instruments I hear playing in my head. Now I hear marching and solemn. So I think having some good MIDI instruments. Think lightly having the brass section in here, not so much woodwinds, a bass and a kick, timpani and a cymbal. It's gonna sound really cool. Awesome. All right, so now I hear like pre-war anxiety, dude, like shrill strings. So this is gonna be really cool. Some like maybe staccatos on the bass. Staccato is like throwing these terms out. We'll get more into that in the arranging section, but I like to define things like jargon as I go. Staccato is playing things like kind of short and quick. So instead of playing like do 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 do, it's do 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 do. That's staccato. Cool. Anyway, so anxiety, trumpets, great, like those high instruments. Flute's a little too smooth for that, but I think an oboe and a high bassoon gonna sound great. And again, if you don't know what these instruments sound like, you can look them up real quick. We'll get more into it in the arranging section, but just a quick like, what does a bassoon sound like? They'll treat you all here. We'll get more in depth later on. Anxiety, bells, chimes. Oh yeah. All right. Valor, bravo, bravery, fanfare. Dude, let's really pull out all stops in this shit here. Like we're getting into strong stuff. Probably don't really need a piccolo. I think some oboes and clarinets for some taste. Bass there. Yeah, we're gonna pull out pretty much the entire section here. Sounds good. All right, heroes approach the battlefield. They're remembering why they're fighting. So they approach the battlefield. Let's go brass, full woodwinds. Maybe not probably don't really need the bassoon in that. But we definitely want full percussion, right? We imagine you're approaching the battlefield and like some blaring fanfare. And then the clash. Everything. Like even if I don't use everything. I'm probably not gonna use the piano guitar in this, but I put it in there for you if you want. Oh, our heroes seem to be winning. Soaring strings, fanfare of the high brass, flutes, piccolos, clarinets, because those sound really nice. Boom, boom, boom. And definitely a harp. Yeah, those sound good. Right, so you see what I'm doing? Like, I'm just really quick. It's just fast. I'm just thinking like, here are the instruments. Here's what I hear. When I think about a vizier pulling everything out from our heroes and like hope being ripped away, I hear very sad violas and cellos, maybe some chaotic trumpets and French horns and like really dissonant combinations, mocking bassoon. Like bassoons can sound like kind of mocking in a high register. So they're really, really awesome instruments in that way. Cymbals, not too much low end on the percussion. Like I want to feel like the floor's dropping out from underneath them. And what we got? 3 more. but they're like, no, fuck that, we're not gonna lose. So let's keep everything bassy, right? So leaving out these high instruments, like violins and trumpets. We're going for violas, cellos, and bass. Not so much woodwinds on here, except maybe for a little bit of color on the low end. Bass, snare, timpani. Don't really need cymbals. Like this isn't like a things are clashing yet. And I think a harp again to color some of this would be good. And then they seem to cinch victory. So we'll keep the mids, but have high brass. Would be cool. Actually, let's throw the woodwinds in because I think like having those help color some of the sound is gonna be nice. And when I say color, I know I've been using that term a lot. Again, we'll get into this in arranging. But even if you don't want like a flute part, a flute mixed with a violin creates an entirely new sound when you mix those two things together. And so you may not have a flute play, oh, here's this flute standing out, but you may be like, huh, this violin in this range of notes that they're playing sounds a little harsh, and so I can soften it by having the flute play on top of it too, and mix those things together. So when I say I want to use these instruments for their color, that's what I mean. I don't really hear a flute or an oboe being played by itself, or a cello by itself. Combination of two or more instruments playing a part is the sound that I get. And that's just going to come from experience. And as we get into arranging, we'll have like sections dedicated to like experimenting with creating colors. It's really cool. And that's the power of the orchestra. And really, any instrument that you use, I mean, without getting too off topic, but if you're into EDM, right, when you're adding different ways on top of each other to create a thicker synth, you're doing the same concept. If you're in a band and you're a guitarist and you have a keyboardist and a bassist kind of playing the same part because you want to reinforce that sound across like the entire frequency spectrum from like low to high, you're doing the same thing. I'm just doing this with orchestra. So if you can do it with orchestra, you can do it with anything. So I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, fanfare. Yes, we got fanfare. A little, some military stuff. Sounds cool. A little taste. Harp could be nice there. And then, transition for now. Let's keep it high again. Flourishing. Snares and timpanis. Maybe the cymbals. Definitely hard. Cool. Awesome. There we go. Again, this is not set in stone. This can change. But what we did is we took our synopsis, our story. We kind of highlighted what we imagined the story to be. And then we assigned it to different parts that would represent the form in our song, what those pieces, what those parts represent, how they make us feel, how intense they are. And then when we think about each of these chapters in isolation, we begin thinking about the instruments that we hear that will help us tell that story. That's a lot. But with that said, homework time. What I want you to do, one, if you can find sheet music of one of your songs, MuseScore, right? Here you go, musescore.com, is a great website to find sheet music. But you can just Google a name of one of your inspiration songs, then sheet music, like we did with this, The Despair-Filled Farewell, sheet music, find sheet music, and then pull it up on MuseScore and start seeing if you can look at the sheet music and say like, hey, like this part looks really different from this part. And then play it and see how really you can start identifying how different parts of the song are going to make you feel and tell a different part of the story. So that's the first thing. Find sheet music, listen to your inspiration, and experiment with this concept. Second, go into your synopsis, right? Pull that in to the Your Song tab, everything from inspiration, here are your song story elements. Pull that into the Your Songs tab and write out the story in more detail. Assign it form parts. create a summary of the feeling that chapter gives you and how intense you want it to be, and then take that, transpose it down here, and then real quickly just think about, all right, here's the instruments I hear when I hear this part of the song. So, inspiration, listen to your inspiration, fill out the your song portion of this mix sheet. When you're done, we are then going to get into starting to compose our melodies. Yeah, we're gonna start messing with melodies. It's gonna be really fun. So with that, I will see you in the next lesson. Bye. Oh, fuck. Before you do, please like and subscribe to this channel. Again, I'm giving this course away for free, and I really want everybody to have access to free music. Only we can fight the algorithm, so the more people that watch this, the more this is going to reach, the more people subscribe and like, the better this is going to reach more people. Give it to a friend, share it with a friend who's interested in making music. And if you haven't, please, in the description below, there's the link to the folder that has all the course materials in it. We have a quick start guide for the software. We have this sheet that shows all of our common forms and definitions. We even have this mix sheet template in there for you that's totally blank with all my examples on there. You can download it. It's there for you. I literally just asked for your name and email just in case of later on I want to do some other stuff with music. I don't know yet, but that's pretty much it. That'd be really cool. So subscribe, follow me, and get ready, do your homework, and get ready to compose some melodies in the next